Welcome to our broadcast from the Togetherness Media Los Angeles Brain Function Series. And Mohammad Nami here, and I'm very pleased to be with you in the 20th episode of our discussions on the brain. And as you've probably been following this for the past several months, we've been discussing about different aspects of on brain function from various perspectives, ranging from cellular, molecular, very fundamental neuroscience aspects, all the way up to how the brain functions in a healthy brain, and also the range of pathological conditions and how we can counteract with the neuropathological situations, how we can get our brain function improved or even enhanced to an even higher level with respect to our cognitive, behavioral, motor, and sensory functions, as well as emotional aptitude. So, yeah, and this has been really interesting and very, very precious opportunity for me to be talking about these kind of things. And as we've been following with you, some of the followers of this series have come back with the feedback saying that, well, let's talk about the keyword neuroplasticity. And we found it, well, yes, that's a pretty good idea. So let's tap into this, because if we understand some key fundamental features and keywords in neuroscience, then we can move even more smoothly to understand more in-depth aspects and in-depth concepts in the field of neuroscience and neuropathology and different aspects of brain and behavioral studies. So we pretty much chose our own course to go for this session and the following sessions to discuss around the key topic, neuroplasticity. So some of you have been familiar with this, some of you might have not heard a lot about it, but something is for certain, that many people think that this is like a novel and a very new concept in neuroscience. Yet this is not true necessarily. So a bit of history could be worthwhile here. And if we're just going back to history, we know that since the year 1890, the remarkable neurophysiologist of our time, William James, has coined the word and the key word of neuroplasticity in his book called Principles of Psychology. And he was kind of, precisely correlating the concept of neuroplasticity to behavior. So he was saying that when the patient with behavioral derangements, with some kind of behavioral or psychiatric, psychological problems or predicaments gets improved, then the idea turns back to the concept of neuroplasticity. So the neuroplasticity results in behavioral change. But that was true, by the way. But the first neuroscientist who applied the keyword, the neuroplasticity, into the field of neuroscience studies was a neuroscientist from Poland, whose name was Jerzy Konarski. And for the first time, he started to apply and scrutinize the word neuroplasticity at neural level. I mean, at synaptic level, at neural circuitry level, or at neural network level, to the concept of changes in the brain. And later in the following decades, some other neuroscientists, including the Italian neuroanatomist Michel Malacarne, and also the father of the modern neuroscience, Raymond Cajal, they started to just, deep dive the concept of neuroplasticity in a whole different perspective. And for example, with regards to the studies that Michel Malacarne was pursuing, he's been training two different sets of animals, laboratory animals like rats, with a specific training protocols. And it turned out that those rats who received this behavioral motor training, they had enlargement of the cerebellum, or they have the thickening of the cortical structures, and also the volume of some subcortical structures was notably decreased as compared to the subset of the animals who did not receive those behavioral motor training. And also Raymond Kohal was extending the concept of neuroplasticity to the healthy brain. And he was saying that, well, based on the basic neuropathophysiological aspects of brain functions and neural circuitries dynamics, we know that the healthy brain can be even increased, and I mean, in terms of its potential or functionality. So the whole idea that, well, the brain is fixed in place, is carved in a stone, and nothing can be changed after we come into adulthood has been dramatically changed since the beginning of the recent century. So since the year like 1900 afterwards, this concept has received dramatic, modifications. Now we know that neuroplasticity has a dramatic impact on our understanding of the brain. We can change the healthy brain. We can use neuroplasticity principles in, remediating the brain predicaments, behavioral derangements, or when we are facing some motor sensory dysfunctions or emotional dysregulation, then we can use pharmacological, non-pharmacological approaches to help remediate or to help repair the condition from one perspective. Number two, and from on the other hand, we know that also for the healthy brain, we can increase and enhance the efficiency of the brain function at synaptic level. Also, we can increase and also revitalize the synaptic efficiency and help the brain get repaired after the insult. So these are the things that we've been really tapping into in neuroscience research for the past 3-4 decades. And the whole perspective has been dramatically changed as compared to our earlier understanding on the impact of, the concept of neuroplasticity. But neuroplasticity is, fact of the matter is that it's not a term which is being viewed from different perspectives by a wide range of neuroscientists. I mean, some neuroscientists are really cellular, molecular neuroscience experts. Some of them are computational neuroscientists. Some of them are, applied neuroscientists or clinical cognitive neuroscientists and neurophysiologists, neuroanatomists. So whoever works in different principal disciplines of neuroscience might have a distinctly different understanding and description, explanation about the word or the term neuroplasticity. They might be saying, well, neuroplasticity refers to the genes. So when we have the modification of the genes and some genes are being expressed or overexpressed or underexpressed, some proteins being produced or not produced, and the changes in the cytoskeleton and structure within the cell is being altered, then we're talking about neuroplasticity, because neuroplasticity refers to the term neuritogenesis. And neuritogenesis or neurogenesis refers to how the cytoskeleton within the cytosol, within the cell, is being changed and modified or improved by the change or modification in the alignment of the neurofilaments or microfilaments within the cytoskeleton of the neuron. So by that, the new projections within the neuron can be extended to form new synapses. So this is the idea from the genetic point of view. Some other neuroscientists who are more interested into the expression of the presynaptic, postsynaptic receptors, or the dynamics of neural transmitters, or the membrane potential. I mean, mostly they are neurophysiologists in a sense. They believe that neuroplasticity is equal to synaptic plasticity. So when we have synaptic plasticity, we have neuroplasticity. Partly that is true, but it's not the whole extent of the story. Some others are just focused about this neural dynamics and the changes and the extension of the neural circuitries or neural networks or networks of networks or meta networks within the brain, if you like. And also, they are always talking about the interface and the interchangeable connectivity between different areas of the brain, whether cortical or subcortical. And they are thinking about the computation modeling of that sort of thing. So they are mostly applied neuroscientists or those people who are thinking more deeply about the how the brain functions from a mechanistic point of view. Some other neuroscientists are just thinking about the changes in behavior. They would say, okay, this person with schizophrenia is getting improved, so neuroplasticity is there. Or they might be thinking from the structural point of view. They look at the MRI, they look at the CT scan or whatever imaging, and they're just calculating the thickness or the volume of the cortical subcortical structures and yeah, they're just focusing on the structural changes in the brain after neuroplastic modifications. But the truth is, when we're talking about this term, the neuroplasticity, perhaps we're talking about the more inclusive idea, more inclusive terminology. So this is like an umbrella term, and that whatever we're discussing about here might be underneath, might be placed and positioned underneath this umbrella term. And to cut the story short for this beginning episode, talking about neuroplasticity, since we agreed, hopefully, that we'll be extending this discussion in the following episodes. I got to be wrapping up this discussion today with some key features and key like layers or paradigms in neuroplasticity. First is the revitalizing or reanimating the synaptic strengths. So when we have some synapses, and those synapses have long been idle, they've not been used or they have not been utilized by you or I or someone else. So we are not using this, and these synapses are weakened. After time, the synapses are distorted and they are not readily available to be utilized, to be used like before. So by this, these are the weak synapses. If we have the weak synapses or lost synapses, and we are going to revitalize, to reform the synapses, this is one approach towards the concept of neuroplasticity, number one. Number two is that, well, there is a synapse, which is good, which is functioning properly well, and that's not been distorted, that's been well in place, but we got to be increasing or enhancing the efficiency of that synapse. So that's what we call it, even further long-term potentiation, strengthening the synaptic structures even more. And that kind of relates to the human enhancement or synaptic empowerment or cognitive empowerment or brain enhancement, right? So this is the idea which refers back to the concept that Raymond Cajal first stated, that in the healthy synapses, we can go for even more synaptic formation and the strengthening or plasticity of the synapse. This is what we call it synaptic plasticity, which refers to an increased efficiency within the synaptic structure. So in some occasions when we have the insult to the synapse, so when we have the synapse which has been injured, which has been insulted, and that's not functional like before. So to increase the sensitivity and the potential of responding of the injured tissue to remediative treatments. For example, we're giving medications, we're using neuromodulation techniques, we're using neurotechnology to reanimate the brain. We are doing the rehabilitation of what so on and so forth. But at this level, the brain and the synapses within the brain needs to be even more sensitive to receive potential for repair based on this intervention. So this is one of the other paradigms in neuroplasticity, which refers to an increased sensitivity of the synapses to get regenerated or re-strengthened after a neural insult. The other concept in neuroplasticity is, number 4, is to increase the sustainability and strength in neurogenesis. So when we're talking about new synapses, well, the synapses need to be sustainable, need to be, positioned in place, and they are not getting disrupted easily. So they are sustainable. in terms of the structure and also the strength of the activity of the synapse and the responsibility that the synapse is taking care of. So this is another concept. Sometimes we're not using synapses for a long time, but it does not mean that we do not have those synapses. Imagine, let's think that I'm going to ask about the name of your teacher when you were in first grade at school. So when you were a preschooler or you were in the first grade at school, what was the name of your teacher? Perhaps you remember that within a few seconds, all right? So this means that we already got a synapse, like, for example, Mrs. Jensen or Mr. Jackson. So this is Mrs. Jensen and Mr. Jackson's synapses were there, but we've not been using the synapses because we've not been retrieving this information from the memory repertoire. So here, when you retrieve that memory from the backstage in the depth of your memory repertoire, then by that, you're reusing, you are reanimating, you're igniting the synapse. So sometimes, and when you're repeatedly recalling that name or the events related to that, then you are causing plastic changes in that specific circuitry or network, or that neural circuit. So this is another concept of neuroplasticity, which means that we are just igniting the silent synapses. And in course of the treatment, when people are being treated either pharmacologically or non-pharmacologically for the neural insults, when we have the repair or when we have the collateral or alternative neural connections, then again we're talking about the concept of neuroplasticity. So neural alternatives, neural connections, collateral connections, that they are replacing the lost connection. This is a very, very important concept in neuroplasticity. The other thing is which refers to the concept of neuroplasticity, is called displaced functionality. So here is the area corresponding to our motor speech function. So if my motor speech is being disrupted after a stroke or trauma or whatever, and I'm not able to produce speech like this, what happens? Is that the end of the story? Or if I'm receiving treatments, if I'm getting like speech rehabilitation, speech language therapy, or some sort of remediative interventions of that kind, is this area is not there because that's already dead, it's gone. But other areas of the brain, for example, the area which is proportional to this area in the other hemisphere is going to take over, and that's going to just replace the functionality of that area, not necessarily at the same level of aptitude, but at some level, this area can take over, can replace the area which has already been injured. This is another thing. And last but not least, when we discuss about the concept of neuroplasticity, we are referring to the behavioral change. So in the whole range of psychological or behavioral problems or disorders that we're facing in the clinic or hospitals, when the patient receives good treatment and gets improved, then something has happened within the brain between the ears, and that is generally referred to as neuroplasticity and neuroplastic change. So there is a lack of concurrence in the use of terminology, but something is for sure that we refer to plastic changes and the potential for functional and plastic structural changes in the brain. And when we learn, we have neuroplasticity. When we change our behavior, we have neuroplasticity. So there's a lot to discuss about this, and I hope this initial introductory discussion about the concept of neuroplasticity has opened new avenues in front of us. Through that, we can discuss even further in the following episodes. And I thank you really so much for your interest and that you're following this kind of discussion series, and we'll catch up later. Appreciate it a lot and keep well.